Thank God it's Friday, and I'm delighted to welcome you to Newspaper Review on High Impact Television. Today, the fourth day in the month of March 2022. I am Sarah Obusoansa. How has your week been so far? We have our guest, the business analyst, live with us in the studio in person of Ayo Emma Kiome. Thank you for joining us on the review this morning.
Thank you for
It's good to have you.
All
right, very quickly, let's begin with what is going on in Nigeria. Can you give us an update of the fuel situation in your area? What is it like where you're coming from?
Well, the fuel situation in Lagos generally is that not many stations are selling, and out of those selling, only a few are still selling within the regulated price. Then the queues are still, as at this morning, they are not very long, as in where I passed. They are not as long as they were yesterday. I'm assuming either because they've not yet started selling or not many people have come to join the queue yet.
Okay. All right. So for a while now, we've been getting a lot of updates from the NNPC about importing a particular amount of liter of fuel into the country and all of that. But despite all of these importations, we still see that the petrol scarcity persists and is not abating anytime soon. What do you think is responsible for this?
Well, the truth is we can make a lot of assumptions, but we are not the NNPC or the government. The true story and responsibility should be coming directly from the petroleum minister, who has not said anything so far. But NNPC has made a lot of claims and counterclaims. For example, as at 2 weeks ago, they said we had enough supply of petrol, and based on that, the queues were going to disappear. The queues went down to a certain extent, but as at Friday, the long queue started again. As at 2 days ago now, they've also said again the same thing they said 2 weeks ago, that trucks are actually moving petrol out of their depots, and so in the next few days, we would have the queues will disappear. But I only saw the queues getting longer and the situation getting worse, except this morning that it seems as if the queues are not as long as they were yesterday. So it's a waiting game, because at the end of the day, it's what they are saying. But is that really the true story? Because that's the question I'm now asking. What is the true story? What is going on? Somebody needs to let us know. And then who is responsible, as in this time really responsible? Nobody's saying anything. So that's my issue. It's only what we see, we are talking, and that's called assumptions. And assumptions are more often not correct.
Okay, so we've seen that most fuel stations that have petrol have increased the amount at which it is sold for. Just a few of them are still selling at the stipulated price. Do you see a possibility of, when this petrol scarcity is over, when things return to normal, is there a possibility of the fuel price that is maintained now also being retained at that time? Do we see an increase, a possibility of an increase in petrol price?
This is Nigeria, so you don't ever rule out any possibility. But the effect, or the possibility of it happening is slim, because already requests have been made for subsidy in our budget. So if that is there, automatically every liter of petrol that comes into this country is already subsidized. If it's subsidized, then we'll still be selling at the current price. That's standard and ideal. But outside that, like I said, it's usually, because this is Nigeria, you don't rule out any possibility. Because now the marketers are saying they get their fuel at above the subsidized price. My question is, how come? Is NNPC no more the importer? Who is supposed to be selling it to them at the subsidized price, and they claim to have it, and NNPC is the sole supplier. So, there are a lot of questions than answers. But ideally, as we are in Nigeria today, the chances of the current price remaining are slim. So that's just it.
Right. So at a point, we can recall that, I don't know if it got to your area as well, power supply became a poor, power supply was it was nothing to write home about for some weeks now.
It still is.
It still is, and a lot of Nigerians have been complaining about this, and some are of the opinion that this poor power supply is a ripple effect of the petrol scarcity. Does this suffice? What is the correlation between these two?
That's an interesting correlation because the only correlation between that and the fuel situation is that this is Nigeria and is something that is happening that we need to deal with. Why am I saying this? This is the dry season when the water level goes down. And once the water level goes down, most of our power supply, like the Egbin power supply, is hydro powered. Automatically, supply from Egbin will be low. But this is an excuse I've been hearing since I was a child. So how come this government or the people in charge still don't have a problem with saying the same thing every year? And how come we are not yet tired of hearing the same excuse every year? I expect that by now alternatives would have been gotten up and alternative sources of powering our power generation systems would have been on ground, like the gas power or something else, solar or something, but it's not there. So they are not correlated, it's just that coincidentally they are happening at the same time. They are low on, what do you call it? They are low on hydro power, and then Egbin had some fault sometime in between, which was their excuse, and then there was an explosion somewhere in between that they had to deal with. But, you know, they are all excuses, really, because these are things that would have been envisaged after how many years and dealt with. But there is really no correlation there. It's just coincidental that they're happening at the same time.
So it's just a coincidence. And
yes, it's a
Nigerians
coincidence.
should not feel like because there's petrol scarcity, we have poor power supply. There's no correlation. Right. Let's move, not moving away absolutely, but let's come down to an issue that is a global issue, talking about the Russia-Ukraine crisis and the tension. This particular crisis is one that is affecting every country around the world. In all honesty,
Yes.
every country has its citizens, at least in either of a lot of countries, in either of the countries, that's Russia or Ukraine. Now, coming down to Nigeria, what is the implication of this Russia-Ukraine tension on the Nigerian economy?
Okay. For the Nigerian economy, Nigeria is still a fossil fuel, crude-dependent country. And outside that, we are supposed to be one of the largest, one of the world's largest producers of crude oil. So Russia now, the war between Russia and Ukraine has caused the cost of crude to exceed the $100 mark, for which Nigeria should be celebrating. We should be happy because our benchmark for our budget for this year is about 62 naira. And then at over 100 naira, then we are done for the year with making money. But sadly, when we are making money from the front, we are losing it at the back to subsidy. And the subsidy is even crippling the economy, not even improving on it. So the higher the price of fuel, then the more the subsidy we pay. And the more the subsidy we pay, the more the economy suffers. So it's a double-edged sword that we need to deal with. And due to that, as the cost of petrol goes up, due to the cost of crude, automatically too, it has affected diesel, the deregulated sector. It has affected kerosene. And sadly, for now, to some extent, we import our gas, even though we have one of the world's largest reserves of gas. And so the price of gas too would go up. So it seems good at the front, but it's a terrible situation at the back. Because once this thing moves on, the country is run on these items. That is what powers the country, especially PMS, because most of our movement is done by road, even though aviation fuel is high. And so automatically, if that happens, the man in the village has to increase the price of his goods to make for the difference. We here, generally, especially even with the fuel situation, there is a slowdown in commerce. Being that there's a slowdown in commerce, that means money making has slowed down. As money making has slowed down, some people have fallen below the poverty line. And as a lot of people are falling below the poverty line, some companies are being shut down. For example, the small logistics business will have to stop doing business because they can't get fuel to buy. Or even if when they get the fuel, they will have to increase their price. And if they increase their price, the buyer, that's the user of the logistic business, that's the bike business, can easily move to the next big company that didn't increase their price. So that one is run out of business. So it's a ripple effect and a multiplier effect all the way from up all the way down.
Right. So still on this issue here, how does this particular issue, let's talk about fiscal deficit, how does it affect the fiscal deficit of the country?
Good. That's at the macro level. At the macro level, already our deficit is supposed to be somewhere around, I think, 5 trillion. But now, and that was based on a subsidy level of, as at January, which was about $90 to a barrel. That was what they looked at. But now it's over $100. And so if this persists, or probably gets to like $150, automatically our deficit as a country would increase. And if it increases or even doubles, then automatically we are running into recession. And running into recession, I don't know if the current government still has what it takes, being that it's an election year, to take us out of it. Because the worry now is who is the next president, not how to put the economy in order. So those are the challenges and the things we need to look at the macro level. And the cost of a lot of things are going up already.
All right. So to what extent, as a business analyst, to what extent would this increase inflationary pressures?
It's only natural. Prices of goods and services have gone up. Automatically, that is a positive correlation with inflation. Prices goes up, inflation goes up. The question now is to what extent. Already our inflation is at about 15%. So we are looking at going much higher than that in the next 2 or 3 months, except the situation is dealt with. And also the war is either abated or they find a peaceful resolution.
I'm trying to, touch on some basic areas that we can see that this crisis can affect. Let's talk about money supply growth.
Okay.
How does this come into play in regards to the Russia-Ukraine crisis affecting Nigeria in terms of money supply growth?
Money supply. Now, the issue is this. The Russia-Ukraine war is causing the cost of crude to go up. As the cost of crude goes up, we cannot but still try and meet up to demand in the country. But in the course of meeting up to demand, it is costing us more to keep the nation moving. So costing us more to keep the nation moving, what happens? Automatically, prices generally has to go up. And with inflation going up, there is now demand for more work to be able to meet up to the increase in prices. If that happens, some people will be out of job and some people will be out of business. And once there is no job or no business, there is no money supply at that micro level. And so automatically, the money supply will be reduced. And then the government will have to now try and seek for more funds in terms of taking up more loans. And if they take up more loans already, about 98% of our revenue goes to debt repayment, both local and international. But so wherever they go to take more funds, then we are now going to have to spend more money to, to service these debts. And in the course of doing that, there will be almost no money in supply, which means government now has to look for other means or more creative means of generating more funds, which means there will be more tax, which means there will be more fees, there will be more fines, and so many things all around in the name of generating more money. And so it's the common man that is right at the heart of the storm that has to take all these pressures.
Right, that's quite a lot there. So rounding off the conversation with you now, we have seen the situation on ground. We've seen that it is affecting us in a lot of ways.
Yes.
How can the situation be managed as a country? What are the measures that can be put in place to ensure that this doesn't affect us beyond the level that it is now?
It's a mammoth question. It's a multi-pronged question. But first of all, we need a government that has the political will to do what they need to do. because that is the call on ground now. For example, the issue of subsidy has to go and has to be dealt with head on. What is it? The refinery. Do we really need to fix the refinery? Why not just sell it off as it is and hand government hands off, and then fully deregulate the oil sector? Then, of course, they need to now create a more enabling environment to allow the small business to grow. Because the more the number of small businesses, then the more there will be employment and the more money available and the more business that will work. And then government too needs to look at our tax regimes. Thank God the legislators have agreed that VAT is supposed to be for the states. And so the states now has more money available to them to develop their states. I hope they will do that to the benefit of the small businesses and the common man. And then government needs to talk more. Let us have a clear sense of direction and where we are going to. And they need to, the CBN needs to improve on their fiscal policies such that interest rates on loans is less and accessibility to loans is more available. And because by the time you do that, more businesses can come up and there'll be more employment. And of course, money will move around faster. And everybody will generally benefit.
All right, that's quite an all-encompassing way to manage the situation that we are in as a country. Thank you so much, Ayo Emakiome. You've given us quite an update on the fuel scarcity, the situation in Nigeria, the way forward, as well as how the Ukraine-Russia crisis is affecting the economy of Nigeria. And we've learnt one or two things from you this morning. Thank you for joining us on The Review.
Thank you so much
It's
for
good to
having
have
me.
you. We draw the curtain on The Review. Thank you so much for joining us. Major thanks to our guest, Ayo Emakiome, for joining us on The Review and for sharing his thoughts with us. Remember to follow us across all of our social media platforms at ImpactTV, ImpactTV UK, and on Instagram at newsaroundtheglobe_. Also remember to stay safe and protect yourself. I am Sarah Owusu-Ansah. See you next time. Stay safe and have a beautiful weekend.